Hello guys, and welcome to another HTML, CSS and JavaScript project tutorial. Today we are going to create a responsive social media website with theme customization using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Alright, so let me walk you through the finished project. Okay, so up top we have our navigation bar, we have our logo on the left side, we have our search bar in the middle, and then on the right we have our create button, which we can click and then start creating our posts, start writing our post. On the far right we have our profile photo. Okay, we have our profile picture, and then on the left side we have our sidebar. We have home selected by default, we have explore, we have some notifications. Okay, so we can click and see our notifications, and then we have messages. Okay, we have some messages, we can click and our messages box is going to be highlighted, and then the highlight or the box shadow is going to disappear in 2 seconds. We have bookmarks, we have analytics, and then we have theme. Okay, so we can actually customize our interface. Okay, so we can click and then change our font size. So you see our font size decreases, they are now smaller. We can change our font size. Okay, we can make them bigger, and then we can change our primary colors. Okay, our primary colors, we can change them so they are now blue. We can make them yellow, and then you see our primary colors change. All right, and we can also change our background. Okay, so we can change our background color as well, so we now have a different theme. We can make it light out or very dark, and then we can combine all and change everything. Okay, so we can change the background, the primary color, and then the font size as well. All right, so we can do that, and we are going to do all this in this video. Now in the middle we have our stories. Okay, and we have our create post to create our post. All right, and then we have our individual posts. So we are going to use CSS flexbox and grid to position or align everything on the page as you see it, and I'm going to show you the responsive side in a little bit. All right, so we have our posts, we have our posts perfectly aligned, and we have messages. Okay, so these are the individual messages. You can see some people are active. We are going to style everything using CSS. Now we can actually search chat. Okay, so let's say our chat is very long and we want to message Adam. Okay, so we can search Adam and then message him. We can search Jane, so everything with the name JA, okay, appears, and then the rest disappears. We can search Daniela, and we have some message requests as well. We have friend requests. We can accept or decline friend requests. They should actually be declined, but we are going to do that. All right, so this is actually going to be responsive, so let's check that out. So on mobile, this is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to look on mobile. We can still customize our interface. Okay, we can change the font size and all that. Okay, we can change the font size and everything. All right, perfect. We can see our notifications, and then on tablets, this is how it's going to look on tablets. Okay, let's say iPad Pro and all that. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. We can still search our messages. We can customize our theme, and you see everything still looks great. Okay, we can change our font size and all that. All right, and we are going to use CSS variables, CSS grid, CSS flexbox So everything modern in CSS you are going to learn in this video. And at the end, we are going to use JavaScript to actually customize our theme. And that is going to be at the end of the video. Okay, we are going to use JavaScript to customize our theme at the end of the video. All right. And we have a lot to do, so let's get started. All right, so here in my projects folder, I have my images. Okay, my images folder, and these are going to be the images. I have my feeds images or my post images, and I have my story images. Okay, and I'm going to leave a link for all these images, and I'm going to leave a link for the source code as well, so you can check that out in the description. And I have my index.html file, I have my index.js, and then style.css. And I'm going to open this in VS Code. Okay, that's going to be the text editor I'm going to use. All right, so for plugins, I'm going to have Emmet. Emmet comes with VS Code, so you may not want to install that. If you are using VS Code, you may have it already. So, and I'm going to have preview on web server, which is going to help me preview my website in my default browser. Okay, without having to reload every time. I'm going to do exclamation tab, and my title is going to be Noco Social, responsive social media website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right, so that is going to be my title, and I'm going to use, okay, let me first link my style sheet. Okay, and I'm going to use icon scout, okay, for my icon. So I'm going to grab the CDN, icon scout CDN. All right, I'm going to leave a link for that in the description. That is going to be the icon scout CDN. Let me leave a comment. Let's start with our navbar. Okay, that is going to be our first HTML element. So our navbar, which is this, okay, this is going to be our navbar. Our navbar is going to have a container, okay, so that we can have everything in the center like this. Okay, so we can have everything in the middle. All right, so it's going to have a container. We are going to have our logo, which is going to be an A2. Let me actually give that a class of logo. All right, that is going to say Noco Social. Next, we are going to have our search box, and that is, or our search bar, that is going to be a div with a class of search bar. And we are going to have our icon, okay, our search icon. I'm going to get that from the Icon Scout website. Search, grab that, paste it in, and I'm going to have my inputs, which is going to have a type of search and a placeholder. All right, so that is all for our search bar. Next, let me actually open this with live preview or preview on web server. Let me open that so that we see what's going on. Next, we are going to have our create button and our profile picture. I'm going to put them in a div with a class of create. We are going to have our label, and that is going to be for, this could be a button, right? But I want it to be a label for the create input here. So we could just click on this and then start typing our post. All right. So that is why I'm going to make this a label. Okay. And that is going to be for create post. And it's going to say create. Next, we are going to have our profile picture, which is going to have our image. So images and then profile picture one. So that is all for our navigation. Now let's move on to the CSS and start styling it. First, let me zero out everything, the before as well, the before of every element and the after. Okay, so I'm going to have margin 0, padding 0. I'm going to have outline to be 0 as well. Box sizing is going to be border box. Text decoration should be none, so that we don't have any underlines for our links. List style is going to be none, and then border, we are going to have no borders, okay, on any element. All right, for the body, I'm going to have font family of Poppins, and I'm going to get that font from Google Fonts. Google Fonts. So Google Fonts, I'm going to search Poppins, and I'm going to get the light. I'm going to get the regular, the medium, the semi bold, and then the bold. All right, actually I don't need the bold. All right, so I'm going to get the CSS. I'm going to import it. So up at the top here, I'm going to paste that in. This is going to be our font, okay, and our font family, we are just going to paste that in as well. So that should change. Okay, so now we have Poppins as our font family. Color of the text, I'm going to have that as a variable. Now I want to have all my variables as global variables, so I'm going to put them in root. Okay, and then to declare a variable, you just put 2 hyphens and then the name of the variable. So this is going to be color dark. Okay, that is going to be our text color. Hue, saturation, lightness. Yeah, so for the dark color, I'm going to have 252 as the hue. The saturation is going to be 30%, and then the lightness is going to be 17%. So to assign my variable to the property, I'm just going to say var and then pass in the name of the variable, which is color dark. Okay, let me show you that this actually from this variable. So I'm going to change this lightness to 77, and then you see our text changes. Okay, so that is coming from this value right here. All right, so our color is going to be color dark, and then our background is going to be a light background as well. Okay, and that is going to be another variable. So I'm going to just paste all the variables. So this is going to be our variables. So our background is going to be var color light. It's going to be light, the light color. And then I'm going to set overflow X. So overflow on the X axis, I'm going to set that to hidden. Okay, so for the container, for every container, I'm going to have the width to 80%. Okay, and that is going to place everything in the center. Okay, and then the profile pictures, profile photo, I'm going to have a width of 2.7 rem, and I'm going to set the aspect ratio to 1:1. Okay, so that the height and then the width are the same. Okay, so if I change this to 3 rems, the height is going to be 3 rems as well. Okay, so there's going to be an aspect ratio of 1:1, making it a perfect square. All right, and then the border radius, I'm going to set that to 50%, and set overflow to hidden. Now for our images, so img, I'm going to display block for every image. Everything with a class of button, I'm going to display inline block. I'm going to have a padding of, let me actually paste this in as well. Okay, so this is going to be So for the padding of the buttons, I'm going to set them to the button or the btn padding, okay, and that is here. Okay, so I'm going to set the padding to this variable, and when we change this padding, every button with a class of btn has to change as well. Okay, so we are going to set that to padding, btn padding. I'm going to have the font width set to 500. Border radius, I'm going to set that to the variable border radius, which is this border radius. I'm going to have the cursor set to pointer. Okay, so the cursor should always be pointer. And then I'm going to transition all 300 milliseconds is okay, and that is going to be for our hover effect. Okay, that is going to smoothen our hover effect. And the font size, I'm going to change that to 0.9 rem. And that is for our buttons. Now I want to have a hover effect for the buttons. Okay, so for that, I'm going to change the opacity to 0.8, and that is all for the hover effects for our buttons. Now anything with a class of button primary, okay, so btn primary, I'm going to have the background set to the variable primary color, okay, or color primary, and then I'm going to set the color. I'm going to set the color to white. And I actually think this button, okay, this button should actually have these classes. So I'm going to add those classes to the button, okay, and that is the label. I'm going to give that a class of btn and then btn primary. And you should see the classes or the styles kicking, okay. So those are the classes for the buttons, all right. Now everything with the class of text bold is going to have a bold font, okay. So I'm going to set that to 500, and then everything with the class of text muted is going to have a color of gray, the gray color, okay, which is a variable color here. All right, okay, so let's move on to the nav bar, the actual nav bar. I'm going to give that a width of 100%. I'm going to give it a background of white, which is the white color variable. I'm going to give it a padding of 0.7 top and bottom, 0.7 rem top and bottom, and then 0 left and right. Okay, I'm going to position that fixed, and let me give it a z index of 10, and that will make it sit on top of everything on the page. Now let's move on to the nav container. For the nav container, I'm going to display flex and then align items to the center. Okay, I'm going to justify content to be space between. Let's move on to our search bar. So navigation and then search bar, okay, which is this side. It was a div with class of search bar. All right, that is what we are going to style. We are going to give the search bar a background of light, color light, okay. We are going to give it a border radius, and that is going to be from the variable border radius. Let's give it some padding. That is going to be from the search padding, which is another variable up top here. Okay, search padding. And I'm giving it this variable because we are going to use it in the messages search as well. Okay, we are going to use it in the messages search. We are going to use it here. That is why I'm making it a variable. Navigation search bar, input with a type of search. I'm going to set the background to be transparent. I'm going to set a width. I'm going to give it a width of 30 rem or 30 viewport width. Okay, so it's going to be 30% of the width of the page or the width of the window. I'm going to give it a margin left of 1 rem. Font size, I'm going to give it 0.9 rem. Let me set the color to be a dark color. Okay, the text is going to be dark. All right, so that is for our search input. Now the placeholder, I want to have the text to be gray. Okay, the placeholder text, and then placeholder font, I'm going to set the color to be variable gray, and you can see it's a little lighter. Okay, that is the gray color. You see the button and then the profile picture is in a class, a div with a class of create. Okay, and that is what we are going to style. So now create, I'm going to display flex, I'm going to align items to the center, and then give some gap, okay, of 2 rem. And I think I have a problem with the profile picture. Let me see what is wrong. Aspect ratio, did I not give it a class? Profile photo, okay. All right, so we have that, and this class is coming from, where is it? This class is coming from this. Okay, this is the class. So now we are done with our navigation bar. Let's move on to our main section, and that is going to have the main tag, and we are going to have everything in a container. Okay, to keep it in the middle, we are going to have that in a container, and inside the container we are going to have 3 sub sections. Okay, we are going to have 3 divs, which is going to be the left, the middle, and then the right. Okay, and we are going to use CSS grid to align this just like you see on the page. So we are going to have the left side, the middle, and then the right. All right, so we are going to have the left side, we are going to have the right, and then we are going to have, sorry, the middle and the right. Let me comment this. So these are the 3 subsections in the container. Now we are going to handle the left side, which is going to have the profile and then the sidebar. So let's tackle that. So inside the left, we are going to have our profile, which is going to be a link with a class of profile, and this is actually going nowhere. So let's remove that href, and inside the profile we are going to have our profile photo, where is going to have the image. The source is going to be the first profile photo in the images folder, and next we are going to have our handle, h for the name of the user, paragraph with a class of text muted. Okay, and that is going to have the actual handle. Let's check that out, and this is what we have. And the profile picture is not shown because it's under this navigation. Okay, and we are going to use CSS to push that down a little bit. Okay, so that is our profile. Now let's move on to the sidebar. Okay, so the sidebar is going to be a div with a class of sidebar, and inside it we are going to have our menu items, okay, which are all going to be links. So inside our sidebar we are going to have our menu items, which are going to be links. So let's do that. So link with a class of menu item, And inside every item you are going to have, this is going to go nowhere, so let's remove that href. Inside every item you are going to have a span, which is going to have the icon, and we are going to grab that icon from icon scout. So that is going to be home for the first one. Let's put that in here, and we are going to have an h3, which is going to be the name, and that is going to say home. Let me duplicate this a few times. Next we are going to have explore, then lastly our settings. Let me remove the last one. Now let me change the icons for each of these. So this is what we have. I'm going to change the icons. A compass, yes, this. I'm going to do this real quick. Let me check that. Okay, so we have the icon. We are going to have the notifications, which is going to be a bell. All right, so I just changed the icons for each of the menu items. Actually, each one of these should be in a link tag. Okay, so each one of these should be in a link tag. All right, so we have our first link, which is the home. Let me give it a class of active. Okay, that is going to be the active class or the active menu item by default. Next we are going to have our explore, which should be this. I'm going to cut that and then paste it here. I'm going to duplicate this one more time. There's going to be the notifications. And then lastly we have our settings. Okay, our settings is going to be the last item in the sidebar. All right, so we have this. Now our notification pop-up is going to be inside this notification. Okay, the notification menu item. All right, so below the h3 we are going to have our notification pop-up. So let me comment that. Let me leave a comment here. Notification pop-up. Okay, that is going to be this pop-up. Let me show you real quick. That is going to be this pop-up. Okay, we are going to put that in the notification menu item. So this is going to have a div with a class of notifications pop-up, and we are going to have a div which is going to hold the notification, and for every div we are going to have our profile photo. Okay, so for every notification we are going to have our profile photo and then our notification body. All right, so the profile photo is going to be an image that is going to be our profile, and then we are going to have the notification body, body, and that is going to have the name. I'm going to put that in a bold tag. This person accepted our friend request. Okay, and we are going to have a small tag which is going to hold the time. There is going to be 2 days ago. Okay, and I'm going to put that, I'm going to give that a class of text muted. Okay, so that is gray. All right, so I'm just going to duplicate this. Okay, this is our first notification. I'm going to duplicate that. The next one, we are going to change the profile picture. Let me show you what's happening here. All right, so these are notifications. Let me fill in the content real quick. Okay, all right, so I just duplicated the notifications and then made some changes to the content. Okay, so this is what we have so far. So these are our notifications. All right, finally on the left side, let's add a button. Okay, this create post button, let's add that to the left side. And this is going to be a label where it's going to be for the create post. Okay, this label is going to be for this create post input that we have here. This create post input. All right, so when we click this, we can just start typing our post. Create post. Okay, let me give this a class. Let's see what's going on. So this is the button, and I'm going to give it a class. Okay, a class of btn, and then this is going to be the primary btn as well. So btn primary. Okay, so that we have this background color and all that. Okay, so we have it. Now we are done with the left side of the page. Okay, so let's move on to the styling. Okay, let's move on to the styling of the left side. Let me actually put in some dummy text for the middle and the right. Okay, so that we can visualize what we have. I'll be changing this, but just for you to visualize what's going on, I'm going to put that in there. All right, so now that we are done with our left side markup, let me quickly give our notifications class. Where is it? This is our notification class. Okay, so let me give it an ID of notifications. Okay, we are going to need that for the JavaScript. We are going to target it with the ID. Okay, so I'm going to give this messages an ID of messages notifications. All right, and also inside the icon tag of the notification and the messages, I'm going to have the notification counts. Okay, so inside the I tag here, I'm going to have a small tag, and that is going to have the notification count. Let me give that a class of notification count. Okay, and the notification count for this is going to be 9 plus, and the messages in the I tag, I'm going to have that notification counts as well. Actually, this ID should come here. Okay, and then I'm going to have the small tag that is going to have a class of notification count as well. Notification count. This is going to be 6 new messages. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Okay, so we have our notification count, our notification pop-up, and then our message count. Okay, all right, so let's move on to styling it. Okay, let's move on to styling the main section and then the left section. We have some part of our main section beneath or under this navigation. Okay, because of the fixed position of the navigation, we have some part of the main section there. So we are going to give our main section a position of relative and then push it down a little bit. Okay, let's move on to our main section container, and that is going to be displayed grid. Okay, so display, we are going to set that to grid, And this is our main section container. Okay, so we are going to have the left section, the middle section, and then the right section displayed grid. Okay, so I'm going to set the grid template columns. The first section, which is the left section, is going to have 18 viewport width. The middle is going to be auto, and then the right side is going to be 20 viewport width. All right, so this is what we have. Okay, so this left section is going to be 18 viewport width. The middle is going to be auto, and then the right is going to be 20 viewport width. All right, let's give it a gap, a column gap of 2 rem, and let's give it a relative position. So that's all for our container. Now let's move on to our left. Okay, the height is going to be maximum content. We are going to position it sticky. So the position for the left is going to be sticky. Let's give it a top, and that is going to be a variable. Okay, so I'm going to grab the variable and then paste that in. All right, it's actually here. So we're going to give this, the left side, this variable, and then the right side is going to have this variable as well. All right, now let's move on to the profile. So this is going to be the profile, and that is going to, we are going to give it a padding. That should be the card padding. Let me give it a background of color white. It's going to have that white background. Let me give it a border radius of card border radius. I'm going to display flex. Okay, and this is what we get. And I'm going to align items to the center. Okay, so it's going to align them vertically to the center. And then I'm going to give it a column gap of 1 rem. Okay, now I'm going to give it a width of 100%. Now let's move on to our sidebar. Okay, so left sidebar, the sidebar is going to have a margin top. Okay, I'm going to push it down, margin top. I'm going to do 1 rem, and then background, I'm going to set the background to be white. Okay, this is the variable white color, and then I'm going to set the border radius to be the card border radius. All right, and that is all for our background. Why is the color not changing? Sidebar. All right, so that should work. I made a mistake with a class. Okay, each of these are menu items. All right, which is this and all that. Okay, so these are our menu items. That is what we are going to start next. So our menu items are going to be displayed flex. Let's get back to this and see what's going on. They are going to be displayed flex. Okay, you're going to see everything work well soon. Okay, let me increase this. You know what, let me actually remove all this dummy text so that we see clearly what's going on the left. I'm going to give it a height of 4 rem. Cursor, I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer, so it is going to have a transition or 300 milliseconds is okay. For a cool hover effect, we are going to have a hover effect, and I'm going to position this relative. Okay, all right, so that is what we have. Next, I'm going to have the hover effect. So left, I'm going to have the background change to the light color. Okay, so we have the transition. Okay, I'm going to increase the font size to 1.4 rem, change the color I'm going to change the color to gray, give it a margin left of 2 rem, and I'm going to position it relative because we are going to position the count, okay, the notification counts, we are going to position them absolute, so we have to give the icons relative since the icons or the I tag is the parent of these notification counts. All right, let's move on to the notification counts. Let's give them background of red. Okay, background is going to be the danger, which is the red color up here. This is the danger color. Okay, color danger, that is the background. I'm going to change the color to white. Font size is going to be 0.7 rem. I'm going to change the width to fit content. I'm going to give it an absolute position, and then from the right I'm going to make it negative 0.3 rem as well. All right, so that is what we have for now. Did I give this a width? Viewport width. Okay, this should be viewport width. All right, next let's move on to the h3. Okay, 3, the text in the menu items. Okay, so left, sidebar, and then h3. I'm going to give them margin left. Okay, I'm going to push it 1.5 rem, and then give it a font size of 1 rem. Now let's move on to the active class. Okay, the active class that we gave the home button. Okay, and then we are going to use JavaScript to change the active class on any element we click. So left, sidebar, and then the active class on the menu items. So the active class, I'm going to just change the background to the light background. Okay, and for every active class or every active item, I want the icon and then the text to be a different color. I'm going to give them the primary color. Okay, so active I, and then left sidebar active h3. I'm going to change the color to the primary color. All right, so now we have this. Okay, the home has the active class, so the colors are now the primary color. All right, you see this blue thing we have for every active class. We are going to do that with the before, okay, of every active. I'm going to display block. It's going to have a width of 0.5 rem. Let me give it a height of 100%, and then I'm going to position that absolute. Okay, that is why we gave the menu item a relative position. Where is it? Menu item, that is why we gave it a relative position. Okay, all right, let's check that out, and then we have it. So that is our before for every active menu item. Now I want the first menu item and then the last menu item to have that border radius. Okay, so border top left radius. Okay, the border top left radius, I'm going to give it the card border radius. All right, overflow, I'm going to set that to hidden. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this and do it for the last element as well, because if we change this active class, you see now the first element, which is the home, has that border radius now. Okay, let me just put the active class on the last element so that you see what I'm talking about. I'm going to have the last element, which is this. I'm going to have the active class on this as well. You see, it doesn't have that border radius, okay, with this. Okay, so the last child, and I'm going to set the bottom left border radius. I'm going to set it, okay. So now we have that border radius with the top and then the bottom, okay, menu items. Right, so that's what I wanted to show you. BTN, we are going to give it a margin top of 1 rem. We're going to push it down a little bit, and then I'm going to give it a width of 100%, the width of the left, okay, align to be center. All right, padding 1 rem 0. Let's move on to our notification pop-up. Which are these notifications? And that is what we are going to style. All right, so we give every menu item a relative position, right? So that means we can position this absolute, okay? It's going to be positioned absolute in the parent element, which is the notification item, and we are going to give it a top of 0 and then a left of 110%. Next, I'm going to set the weight to 30 rem, and then I'm going to give it that white background color, okay? So the color is going to be white, the white variable color, and then I'm going to set the border radius to be the card border radius. Let me give it some padding. I'm going to give it a box shadow, okay, of 0 0, so that whenever we change the theme color, it's going to also have that red box shadow, okay. So you can see we have the box shadow red right now. We can change it, and then we are going to have it changed as well. We are going to use JavaScript to change this, okay. So that is why we are giving it that variable 60%. Let me give it transparency of 25% as well, and I'm going to give it a z index. All right, now I'm going to style every div or every every notification, okay, the direct divs, okay. So we are going to style the direct divs, which are the individual notifications. I'm going to display flex on them and align. I'm going to align items to start gap of 1 rem, and I'm going to give it a margin bottom of 1 rem as well, okay, so that we have some space. And the small tags, I'm going to display block. The small tags, I'm going to display block. All right, so we are done with the notification pop-up. We are done with the sidebar. We are done with the left side. For now, we don't need a notification pop-up, so I'm just going to display none. We are going to use JavaScript to show it, okay. So that will be done at the end of the video. All right, now let's move on to the markup for the middle, okay, the stories and then the posts, the stories and then the posts. Let's move on to that. So in the middle, we are first going to have our stories. So I'm going to have a div with a class of stories, and we are going to have our story, okay. So each story is going to have a profile picture, okay, profile, so profile photo, okay, and we are going to have the image, and then we are going to have the name, okay, the name of the user, and that is going to be in a paragraph. Let me actually give it a class of name. So we have the first one. The next one is going to be another person's story. This is going to be Lila James, and I'm going to change the profile to the 9th one. The next one is going to be Next, we are going to have the create post. Okay, so we are going to have this section right here. So we are going to have this, all right, and that is going to be in a form. I'm going to have no action on this, but I'm going to give it a class of create post. Okay, and we are going to have a profile picture, which is an image, which is the first one. And we are going to have our input. Okay, and this is going to be a text input, and this is actually going to have an ID of create post. Okay, so these two buttons, okay, we give them a 4 attributes of this create post. Next, we are going to have an input of submit, and that is going to have a value of post, and we are going to give it a class of btn primary. All right, so that is all for our stories and our create post section. Let's head on to the CSS and start styling. So all right, so let's check out what we have from the markup. Okay, so these are the stories, and this is the create post section. Okay, let me actually put this side by side. Middle stories, I'm going to display flex. Okay, so that we have them side by side. Justify content to be spaced between. Okay, so that they have even space between them. And then height, I'm going to set that to 12 rems. I'm going to give them a height of 12 rems, and then give them a gap. Okay, I want to have some gap between them, which is going to be 0.5 rem. Okay, let me give them a background right now so that you see what's going on. All right, so this is it. Okay, this is our stories. All right, now let's move on to our individual stories. Okay, so middle stories and then story. Each story is going to have a pattern of the card pattern. Okay, let's have a border radius of the card border radius as well. And I'm going to change the flex direction. Okay, to the flex direction, I'm going to change it to column. Justify content is going to be space between. I'm going to align items to the center. I'm going to change the color, the text color. I'm going to make it, let me make that white. The text color is going to be white, and then the font size is going to be 0.75 rem. Let me give it a width of 100%. Let me actually remove this. I'm going to give every individual, let me give this a background of red so that you see what's going on. Okay, so these are our stories. All right, I'm going to position them relative, and then overflow, I'm going to set that to heading. All right, so those are our stories. Now each story is going to have a background. Okay, so the image posted in the story is going to be a background for this. Okay, for each of the stories. Okay, so let me send the first child. Let me actually do, we're going to use the pseudo class. Okay, so I'm going to do env child. Okay, and we are going to have the first one. So the first one is going to have a background, which is going to be an image. So URL images, and then story, the first story, no repeats, center, and then the cover. All right, that is our first story. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this a few times. So we have our first story, our second story. Our second story is going to be the second story picture, and then the third one is going to be the third story photo. So we have our stories. Now the names of the stories are not showing clearly, right? So with that, I'm going to get the I'm going to get the before of each story, okay? And then I'm going to display block. I'm going to set the rate to 100%. I'm going to set the height to 5 rem. I'm going to give it a background. Let me make it black for now so that you see what's going on. Okay, so that is the before element, and I'm going to position it absolute. Okay, absolute. That is why we have a relative position here in the parent. All right, and I'm going to push it down. Okay, so it's going to be under each text. Okay, so I'm going to push it down, so from the bottom is going to be 0. Okay, and we have that. Now you can see it's sitting on top of the text. Okay, so we are going to give this a z index of -1. Or actually, you know what, let me give the z index to the text. Okay, so here I'm going to have the middle story name. We gave it a class of name, right? Z index. Okay, so the z index is going to be 2. All right, and now problem solved. Now I'm going to change the background. Okay, so the background, I'm going to make it a linear gradient. Okay, linear gradient. So let me show you with a white and black so that you see the difference. Okay, so this is how the linear gradient is going to look. Okay, so this white side is going to be transparent, and then the black side is going to be black with some transparency. So I'm going to have that set to RGBA of 000 and then 0.75 transparency. Okay, and now you can see every text is clear. Okay, every name is clear now. Okay, all right, now let's move on to the profile photos. Okay, I want to change the sizes of the profile photo. So middle, story, and then profile photo. I want to set the width to 2 rem, and then the height is going to be 2 rem as well. I'm going to align self. I'm going to align self to start. All right, and I'm going to give it a border. Okay, a border of 2 pixels solid. Okay, color primary. All right, let me actually make this a 3. Let me see what's happening with the 3. Yeah, I think 3 is good. All right, so now we are done with our stories. Okay, let's move on to the create section. Okay, this section, the create post section. I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and I'm going to display flex vertically. I'm going to align them vertically centered, and then I'm going to justify content to be spaced between. Okay, I'm going to give it a margin top of 1 rem so that it's pushed down a little bit, and let's give it a background of white. Okay, so the variable white color white, and then I'm going to give it a padding of 0.4 rem top and bottom, and then the card padding for the left and right. Okay, I'm going to give it a border radius of the border radius, which is for these buttons. Okay, so it's going to have the same border radius as the buttons. All right, and now we have our create post. I'm going to justify self to start. I'm going to give it a width of 100%, give it a pattern left of 1 rem, transparent, and then color, I'm going to have that set to the dark color. Okay, and then margin right is going to be 1 rem. Now let's move on to our posts, okay, or our feeds. All right, let's move on to our individual feeds. Let's move on to our feeds. So let's start with our feeds. We are going to have a class of feed for each of the feeds. So each feed is going to have a head class, a photo class, which is going to hold the image, the main image. We are going to have our action buttons, which are going to hold these icons. And then we are going to have liked by, okay. There's going to be a class, a div with a class of liked by, okay. And then we are going to have our caption, and then finally we are going to have our comments, okay. Okay, so every feed we are going to have the head, as I said, and the head is going to have the user. Then we are going to have the profile photo. We are going to have the info. So the name is going to be in H3, okay, so Lana Rose. And then the time and location is going to be in a small tag, okay. Next, we are going to have our icon, which is going to be this ellipsis icon. And this is going to be the icon. I'm going to put that in a span with a class of edit. So that is all we have. From the head, we are moving on to the main photo, okay, the main image. Our first feed image. Let me put some spaces in here. Next, we are going to have our action buttons, which are going to be the icons. So, and the action buttons, I'm going to have two divs, okay. The first one is going to have a class of interaction buttons, and then the second one is going to be for the save or the bookmark, okay. So these are going to be the interaction buttons, and then this is going to be the bookmark. And I'm going to use CSS Flexbox. That is why I'm having those two. I'm having these two divs, okay. This is going to be bookmark. Let me grab those icons real quick. The first is going to be like, the like or heart is going to be the first icon. And I'm going to put that in a span, okay. The next is going to be our comment, I think. We are done with that. Now let's move on to the liked by section. This is going to be, this is the section I'm talking about, okay. And for that, I'm going to put 3 images in a span, which are going to be profile images. I'm going to have a profile 10. I'm going to duplicate this, then change this to 4, and then this to 15. And we have those images here. I'm going to put a P and then say liked by. That is all for our liked by section. Let's move on to the caption and div with a class of caption. I'm just going to copy this real quick and then paste it in here. All right, I'm going to put that in a P, a paragraph tag. The name is going to be bold, so I'm going to put that in a B tag. Okay, and the hashtag is going to have a primary color, so I'm going to put that in a span with a class of hash tag. Drop that in the comment section. I'm just going to copy this. It's just going to be a div with a class of text muted. I want to have that gray color. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that in. Let me actually give this a class of comments. Okay, all right, and then it's going to be our first feed. Let me see what's going on with it. All right, so this is what we have so far. Now let's move on to styling the post. Okay, let's move on to styling our post. So we are going to give every feed a background of white, which is color white, and the variable color white. We're going to give it a border radius of the card border radius, and then give it a padding, card variable padding. Okay, I'm going to give it a margin of 1 rem top and bottom, and then 0 left and right. I'm going to decrease the font size to 0.85 rem, and then the line height is going to be 0.5. Okay, I'm going to move on to the head section, the div with a class of head, which is this section. I'm going to display flex on that. Okay, and I'm going to justify content to be spaced between. Class of head. Did I not give it a class of head? Class of head. What is going on? I should have this side by side. I've made a mistake here, I think. Let me just, so this is the head. We have the user. Oh, this should be outside. Okay, put it outside of it. They should be siblings. Okay, so now they are aligned well as expected with the flexbox. Okay, with this. All right, so that is that. So display is going to be flex, and I'm going to give it a gap of 1 rem. Okay, so that we have some space between the image and then the name there. Okay, we give this image the class of photo. Okay, so we give the div, the parents div, a class of photo. So for that, we are going to have the border radius set to the card border radius, and we are going to change the overflow. The overflow is going to be hidden, and then the margin is going to be 0.7 rem top and bottom, and then 0 left and right. Okay, so that is for our image. Let's move on to our action buttons. Okay, so these are action buttons. Let's move on to that. Remember, we gave it a class of action button, so let's display flex. I'm going to justify content to be spaced between, so that we have some space between. What is wrong? I think I made the same mistake with this as well. Action buttons with this action buttons. Okay, I'm going to align items to the center, and then I'm going to increase the font size. I'm going to make that 1.4 rem for the icons. Okay, so the icons are going to increase in size. I'm going to give it a margin of 0.6. Okay, rem, margin of 0.6 rem on all sides. All right, now let's move on to the liked by section. Okay, middle. All right, so we are going to first style these images, which are going to be the liked by people. These images, let me actually display flex on the liked by. Okay, I'm going to display flex on the liked by, and then the spans which are the parents of the images. I'm going to have the width set to 1.4 rem. The height is going to be 1.4 rem as well. Okay, they are going to be displayed block. I'm going to give them a border radius of 50% so that they are round, they are circle. Overflow, I'm going to set that to hidden. And then border, I'm going to have a border of 2 pixels solid, and that is going to be the white color. Okay, color white, which is the variable color. And I'm going to have a margin left of negative 0.6 rem. Okay, so that they overlap on each other like this. Okay, but you see the first one is a little over the border. Okay, it's a little too far on the left, so we are going to take care of that. So that is going to be the first child pseudo class, and I'm going to set the margin for that to be 0. Okay, so now it's aligned perfectly. Let me give this a margin. Okay, I'm going to give this a margin left. Okay, I'm going to, I think that is a paragraph, right? Yeah, so it was in a paragraph. I'm going to give that a margin left of 1 rem. Actually, let me make that 0.5 rem. Okay, all right, so there's some space. Okay, so we have our first post. Okay, we have our very first post. Nice, beautiful. Now I'm just going to duplicate the first feed or our first post. I'm going to duplicate that. How many times did I do that? Let me see. Okay, so we have our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Okay, I actually want to have only 7, so 7 is good. All right, so we have 7 feeds or 7 posts. Okay, so I'm just going to change the content real quick. All right, so I changed some of the content. I changed the content of the various posts, so you can see we have some dynamics among them. Okay, so these are the posts that we have now. All right, so we are done with the left section, we are done with the middle section. Let's move on to the right section. All right, so for our right section, we are going to have our messages. We are going to have our messages, and then we are going to have our friend request. Okay, our friend request, and the messages, we can actually search the users we want to message and all that, and we'll get to that in the JavaScript. Okay, so now the messages, as I said, so this is going to be in the heading. Okay, this title, and then the icon. The heading is going to be h4, and then I'm going to grab the icon. Okay, the icon, that is edit, I think. I'm going to have the search bar, and that is going to have the search icon, and then the input. Okay, input of search, placeholder, and then an ID. We are going to give this an ID of message search. Okay, we are going to target it using JavaScript, so we need that ID. Next, we are going to have our messages category. All right, so we're div with a class of category. I'm going to have the message category as an H6, and this, the first one is going to have a class of active. The first one is going to have a class of active, and that is going to be the primary messages. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this. Message requests, and the requests are going to be 2. Let me actually make this 7. So each message is going to have a class of message, and we are going to have the profile picture of the sender, and then we are going to have the message body. It's going to have the name of the sender and a paragraph. Okay, message has been read already, so it's going to have the text muted class. We're going to have our requests, and it's going to be a div with a class of friend requests. The title is going to be in an H4, and each request is going to have a class of requests. We are going to have the info, where is going to have the image, the profile picture, profile photo. We're going to have a div with the name of the sender and the paragraph with a text muted class. Okay, and that is going to have the mutual friends, number of mutual friends. Okay, and I'm going to have a div with a class of action, which will have the buttons to decline or accept the request. So button with a class of btn primary, that is going to be the accept button, and then we are going to have the decline. Okay, we can accept or decline, and that is not going to have the primary button class. Okay, so that is all for our messages and friend requests. Okay, we are going to style it, and then I'll come back to the markup and duplicate the messages. All right, container right. Okay, I'm going to give that a height of maximum content. Is going to be the height of the maximum content height. It's going to have a sticky position. Okay, and you are going to know more about the sticky position once we get to the theme customization. All right, I'm going to give it a top of sticky right, which is a variable up top. Okay, so negative 18 rem. Okay, we are going to change this using JavaScript during the theme customization. Okay, so that's why I put it in the variable. So a top, and then I'm going to give it a bottom of 0. Okay, so that is our right. Now let's go to our messages. Okay, so we have a class of messages. I'm going to give that a background. Let me actually, let's see what's going on. Okay, so this is all we have. This is what we have for the right side, and that is what we are styling now. I'm going to give that a white background, so white color. I'm going to give it a border radius of the card border radius, and then give it a padding of the card padding as well. That is for our messages class. Let's move on to the heading, which has the H4 and then this button or this icon. So the heading is going to be displayed flex so that we have them side by side. I'm going to align items to the center, and I'm going to justify content to be spaced between. Okay, so that I have the icon at the far right. Next, I'm going to have a margin bottom of 1 rem. Font size, I'm going to set the font size for that to be 1.4 rem. All right, let's move on to the search bar. Okay, so write messages search bar. I'm going to display that flex. Let me give that a background of red so that you see what's going on there. I'm going to have a margin bottom of 1 rem. Did we give it a class of search bar? Search bar. We give it a class of search bar. What is happening? Okay, you know what? I think this should have the same. This should have the same styling as the search bar up top. Okay, search bar in the navigation bar. Okay, it should have the same styling as that. So dash bar. Okay, I'm going to remove this now, and then this should affect this as well. Okay, save, and then we have that. All right, I'm going to remove that background, that red background, and this is going to. All right, let me see what's the problem. Search, take this off. All right, so that is perfect. Looks better now. Okay, now let's move on to the category. Okay, so message category. So messages, the messages category. I'm going to display that to be flex. I'm going to justify content to be spaced between, and then the margin bottom is going to be 1 rem as well. So we have them side by side. Now each of these I'm going to style. Okay, right, messages category, and then h6. Okay, they are in h6 tag. Okay, so they are in h6 tag. Okay, so we are going to style them. I'm going to give them a text align. of center. I'm going to give them a border bottom of 4 pixels solid, and then the light color. Okay, so we have that, and I'm going to push it down a little with some padding. I'm going to push the border a little down with 0.5 rem padding. Okay, let me change the font size to 0.85 rem. All right, so that is for our categories. Active. I'm just going to change the border color. Okay, the border color, I'm going to give it the primary. Let me make it the dark. Okay, let me see what I did here. I'm going to change the border color to be the dark color. Okay, save, and then we have it. So the border color of the active class is changed to the dark color. Now for every message, I'm going to display flex. Okay, so I'm going to display flex on every message so that the profile picture and then the text are aligned side by side. Okay, and then I'm going to give them a gap of 1 rem between them, and then margin bottom of 1 rem as well. Now every last child of the messages, I want to 0 the margin. Okay, so last child, I want the margin should be 0. Okay, so that we don't have this margin bottom. Okay, and I'm going to align items to start. Okay, so that it takes care of this weird shape with the profile picture. I want to resize the font size for the messages. Okay, the message itself, the text message itself. So that is going to have 0.8 rem font. Okay, so the font size is a little smaller. All right, now I'm going to duplicate the markup. New messages are going to have a class of text bold. Okay, so they are going to have a class of text bold, but you can actually put them in a bold tag if you want. I just wanted to have some dynamics. Okay, so that is why I gave it a class of text bold. And remember, we set a class up top, a general class of text bold, and that is going to give it that bold font weight. Okay, so that is what I did there. And then I had some active people as well. So every active person is going to have a green check. Okay, so I have this div with a class of active, and that is going to be the green check. Okay, this green dot that shows the person is active. All right, so those are the changes I made in the markup. All right, so let's head to the styling. So let me quickly style the active people. Okay, so message active. Okay, and that is actually in the profile photo. That is in the profile photo active. So I'm going to give it a width of 0.8 rem, and it's going to have a height of 0.8 rem as well. I'm going to give it a border radius of 50% and a border of 3 pixels solid, and then white is going to be white. Okay, and that is going to be the color white. I'm actually going to position this absolute to the profile picture. Okay, It's inside the profile picture. Let me show you again. So child of this profile picture. Okay, so I'm going to position this profile picture relative, and then this active class is going to be positioned absolute. So here I'm going to have the profile photo is going to be positioned relative. Okay, and this time I'm going to set the overflow to visible. All right, so that we actually see what is going on. We actually see the dots. Okay, else it will be hidden. All right, I'm going to set my images profile and then img. I'm going to set the border radius to be 50%. Back to the active, I'm going to have a back. I'm going to give it a background of green, which is the success color, and that is another variable icon. Okay, so you can see now we have our active dot. I'm going to position this absolute position, and then from the bottom is going to be 0, and then it's going to be 0 from the right as well. So we have that. So this person is active and this person is active as well. Okay, beautiful. Now I want to have this requests. I want that set to the primary color. Okay, so that is going to be the primary color. I gave that a class of requests. If you can remember the categories here, I gave that a class of messages requests or message requests. So all right, so we have that. Now let's move on to our friend requests. Okay, let's move on to our friend requests right here. So write friend requests. I'm going to have some margin at the top. So margin top, I'm going to set that to 1 rem. The h4, which is the title, I'm going to set the color to be gray. Okay, it's going to have that gray color. And then the margin bottom is going to be 1 rem. Okay, actually let me set the top and bottom to be 1 rem. Let's move on to our individual requests. So each request is going to have a background of white, the color white, and then the pattern is going to be the card pattern. Let's give it a border radius of the card border radius, and then margin bottom of 0.7 rem. I'm going to display flex on the info, okay, of 1 rem, and a margin bottom of 1 rem as well. I actually think I made a mistake with the markup. Let me go down to the, so we have our requests, and then okay, so the action buttons should be outside the info. Perfect. Let's move on to our action buttons. Okay, so write request, the action. I'm going to display flex on that, and I'm going to give it a gap. Okay, let me give it a gap of. So now we are done with our right side as well. Okay, so let me just duplicate this requests so that we have some dynamics. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this. So that is all for our sidebar, our stories, our feeds, our messages, and our requests. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to our theme customization modal. For that, I'm not actually going to type in the markup. Okay, that is going to waste too much time. So I'm just going to paste that in. Let me actually leave a comment here. So nothing fancy. I just have a div with a class of customized theme. Inside I have a card which is going to be this card. And we have these pans which are going to be these. Okay, so these are the spans that you see there. Okay, and those are going to be the targets for changing the fonts. And we have different classes for all of them. Okay, so this is font size 2, font size 3, font size 4, and then font size 5. We are going to use JavaScript to target the different classes that they have. Next, we have our color palette, okay, or our color customization, and that is also going to have spans with different classes. And we are going to do almost the same thing with the fonts. Okay, so that is going to be these colors. Okay, all right, and the last one is the backgrounds, and that is going to be div with the class of choose bg, and then each of them is going to have a different class as well, and we are going to target them using JavaScript. So that is the markup. Let's move on to the CSS. So the modal has a class of customized theme. Okay, that is the class. I'm going to give it a background of white. Okay, I'm going to give it an RGB background. Okay, so white is 255 255 255 with some transparency, and this is going to be 0.5. I'm going to give it a width of 100 viewport width and a height of 100 viewport height. I'm going to position that to be fixed. Okay, let me show you what's going on. All right, so I'm going to give it a top of 0 and a left of 0 as well. All right, so now it's showing. Okay, I'm going to set the z index to be 100. Text align is going to be center, and then I'm going to display grid so that I can place items to the center. Okay, everything is going to be in the middle. So we have it. Now let's move on to the card. Okay, so customization theme and then card, which is this. Customize theme and then card. Okay, so the card is going to have a background of color white. I'm going to give it a padding of 3 rem and a border radius of the card border radius. I'm going to give it a width of 46 rem. Let me actually give it a width of 60%, okay, or 50%. So it's going to be 50% the width of the window. Okay, we're going to use CSS media queries to make it responsive. Now the piece, okay, the paragraph, this paragraph, I want to change the color. So let me actually just, where is it? I'm going to give it a class of text muted. All right, and it's going to have that gray color. And this is the class of font size. For that, we are going to give it a margin top of 5 rem. That every direct div in the font size, I'm going to display flex. And these are what we are styling now. Justify content to be space between, align items to the center, and then give it a background. I'm going to give it a pattern of search pattern, the search bar pattern, and then give it a border radius of the card border radius. I'm going to give it a background of secondary. The height is going to be 0.3 rem. The width is going to be 100%. Let me give it a margin of 0 top and bottom and 1 rem left and right. I'm going to display flex and justify content to be spaced between. I'm going to align items to the center as well. This is the parent for the spans, okay? It's going to be the parent for the spans. It's going to be the parent for these spans, okay? These clickable spans, all right? It's the parent for these spans. I'm going to give them a width of 1 rem, a height of 1 rem as well. I'm going to give them a background of the secondary background, and then border radius is going to be 50%. I want them to be circle. I'm going to set the cursor to be pointer. So any span with a class of active is going to have a different background, okay? And that is going to be the primary color background, okay? So any span with a class of active is going to have that background. Let me just put this, let me put an active class on this, all right? With a class of active. That's for the fonts. Let's move on to the colors, okay? Let's start the colors. I'm going to have a margin top of 2 rem. I'm going to give it a background. So this is what we are styling. I'm styling this, okay? I'm going to give it a padding of search padding, and then a border radius of variable card border radius, and I'm going to display flex as well. I'm going to align items to the center, okay? I'm vertically aligning everything to the center, and I'm going to justify content to be spaced between. So for each span, okay, for each span, which are the various colors that we have here, for each span I'm going to give them a width of 2.2 rem and a height of 2.2 rem as well. Let me set the border radius to be 50%. Okay, I want them to be circle. If I give them a background right now to be red, you see they are there, okay? But I want them to have different backgrounds, okay? So I'm just going to type that out real quick, okay? So these are the various colors for them, okay? I actually use the pseudo class, the CSS pseudo class, okay? So but you can use their various classes if you want, okay? I give them classes here so you can use them if you want. So what I did here was just change the hue to get the various colors, okay? So here, let me just show you real quick. I'm going to display none on the modal here, okay, so that I can show you this real quick. So we have our primary color set to this, okay, and the hue is 252. I can change this to 22 and save. You can see our hue changes. Okay, our hue changes, and I'm going to set this to another value, let's say 82. Notice our saturation and lightness remains the same. Okay, we are only making changes to our hue. I'm going to make this 0, and that is going to give us red. Okay, that is going to give us red. All right, so we are just changing the hues to get these different colors. All right, so that is what we are doing down here. So let me set our modal back. Let me change the display. All right, so here we are just changing the hue to get these different colors. Okay, let's move on to this side. For the markup, we have a class of background. Before then, I want to have some styling for any span with the class of active. Okay, so customize theme, choose color, and then span with the class of active. I want to have a border of 5 pixels solid, and I'm going to make this white. Okay, so the first one has the active class, which is this. That is why we have it here. Okay, margin top, I'm going to give it a margin top of 2 rem. Choose BG. I'm going to align items to the center, and I'm going to justify content to be space between. Okay, and a gap of 1.5 rem. This right here, just copy this, paste. Every directive, I'm going to give them padding of the card padding, give them a width of 100%, display flex, align items to the center, and change the font size to 1 rem. Let me change the font weight as well. I'm going to change the font weight to bold, and the border radius is going to be 0.4 rem. I'm going to change the cursor to pointer. Okay, now every background with the class of active, I want to have a border. Okay, and that border is going to be 2 pixels solid, and it's going to be the primary color. Let me give one the active class so that you see what's going on. The first one is automatically going to be the active class. Now let's have the colors for the backgrounds. Okay, so with the backgrounds, we have BG1, BG2, BG3. Okay, so the first one, BG1, the background is going to be white, the color is going to be black. The second one, the color is going to be a hue saturation lightness 25 to 30%, 17%, which is color dark. Text is going to be white. Let's save. This should be 17%. All right, so we have that. This should be the second one. Okay, and the last one is going to be BG3, and this is going to be 10%. The color is going to be white. Now let's move on to the span. Direct div with span, give it a width of 2 rem, a height of 2 rem as well, a border of 2 pixels solid, and then the gray color. Set the border radius to be 50%, and the margin right, I'm going to set that to 1 rem. Okay, so this is what we have. Now for the HTML and CSS, we have everything done, remaining the responsive design. So that is what we are going to do next. Okay, you see on mobile, this doesn't look very good. Okay, so that is what we are going to take care of. We are going to use CSS media queries to make this responsive. Okay, so we are going to use two media queries for this. Okay, we are going to have one for laptops and big tablets, and then the next one is going to be small tablets and then mobile phones. Okay, so that is what we are going to do, and I don't want to type everything out for this responsive design because this video is already getting too long. Okay, so what I'm going to do is walk you through the process of the responsive design. I'm not going to type everything out. Okay, so first I'm going to change the container. Okay, I'm going to change this container. I'm going to change the width to 96%. Okay, I'm going to change the grade template columns of the container. Okay, I'm going to change the grade template columns, and that is going to affect the direct diffs, which is the left, the middle, and then the right. Okay, so the grade template columns is going to be 5 frames for the left side, auto for the middle, and then 30 viewport width for the right side. So this side is going to be 5 rems, the middle is going to be auto, and then the right side is going to be 30 rems. Okay, so let me save that, and we get this. Okay, this is what we get. All right, let's move on to the next one, and I'm actually giving it a gap. The first one, the gap was around 2 rems. Now I'm giving it a gap of 1 rem. Next, we are going to give the left a width of 5 rems. Okay, and then give it a z index of 5 so that it sits on top of everything. Next, we are going to display the profile. This profile, we are going to display that none, so we are going to remove it from there. Next, we are going to remove all the h3s in the sidebar. We are going to remove all these h3s. Okay, all these h3s, we are going to remove them. So let me save that, and now they are removed. And then we are going to remove the button as well. We are going to remove this button as well. Now the second media query, which is for small tablets and mobile phones, and for that we are going to remove the search bar here in the nav bar. Let me save that, and we are going to change the media queries for the container as well. Okay, so the left is going to be 0, the middle is going to still remain auto, and then the right is going to be 5 rems. Okay, and then next, the left side, okay, which is this side, we are going to push that to the right. Okay, so for the grade system, we have the columns starting from this side. Okay, so this is the starting point of the container. So this is going to be 1, this is the middle, so it's going to be 2, and then the beginning of the right is going to be 3, and then the end of the container is going to be 4. Okay, so here in the left, we are saying our left column should start from 3 to 4. Okay, should start from 3 to 4. So that is what we are saying here. Okay, so it's going to be pushed to this side. Let me save that and see what happens. So that is what we've done here. All right, we've changed the position to be fixed. Okay, and then the bottom and the right are 0. Now the notification pop-up is going to have a different style as well. The before of the notification pop-up is going to have a slightly different style as well. I'll remove that later on. Okay, the middle is going to have this grid column. Okay, so that is going to start from the starting point and then going all the way. This is actually not needed since we have our first grid columns to be 0. Okay, let's continue. Our right is going to be displayed none, so we are going to take our right side, which has the messages and then the friend requests, and that is all for our responsive design. As I said, there is not actually necessary, so let me remove it because we already have it displayed none here. Okay, so we can remove that from this side. Okay, perfect. So that is all for our responsive design. I think there is too much space here. Okay, so let me take away this gap. Where is it? I'm going to set this gap. There's too much space, so I'm going to set the gap to 0. All right. So now we have the perfect space. Now let's continue to the JavaScript. Okay. Let's proceed with the JavaScript. So we have our JavaScript linked already. Let's just alert something to make sure everything is working fine. Okay, so it's working perfectly. So I want these elements to have the active class when they are clicked. Okay, these menu items, and I give them a class. Each of them have a class of menu item. Okay, so that is what we are going to use to grab them. I'm going to use query selector, or for menu items I want to use the for each loop. Okay, so for each item I want to add an event listener, which is going to be a click event. So when they are clicked, I just want to add a class of active. Okay, so when they are clicked, they are going to have the class of active. All of them now have the class of active. Okay, and that is a problem. So I want to remove the class of active from all the menu items when one is clicked. Okay, so I'm going to write a function here. Let's say remove active class from all menu items. And I'm going to use for each loop to loop through them, and I'm going to remove the class. Okay, so the class list, I'm going to remove the active class from else each of them. Okay, so whenever one is clicked, I want to call this function. Okay, if the notification is clicked one, I want to remove this notification count. Okay, and secondly, I want to show the notifications pop up. So that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use an if statement here. So if item dot id is not equal to notifications, so if the menu items doesn't have an id of notifications, I want to get the notification pop up. I'm going to get the notification pop up. Remember, we gave it a class of notification pop up, and then I'm going to change the display. Okay, I'm going to change the display to none. So if any item is clicked and it's not this, then I want to change the display to none. Okay, I want to show the notification. Okay, so documents, I'm going to repeat the same thing here. So if the notification is clicked, or if the item clicked has an ID of notifications, okay, then I want to show this. So this is going to be displayed block. So this should be notifications pop up. Okay, notifications pop up. So let's try that again. And now whenever we click on the notifications, you see we have our pop up. All right, so that is what we want. Now I want to hide the notification count as well. Okay, so I'm going to get that. So document dot query selector, and that is in the ID of notifications. Okay, else when we click, this message is going to go away as well. So we want to be specific. Okay, so notifications, we give this menu item an ID of notifications. Okay, so inside that we want to grab the notification count, none as well. Okay, let's try that. So when we click on the notifications, this count should go away, should be display. Okay, so I'm going to change the display to none. Okay, so let's try that again. So that is what we want. Now let's move on to our messages. Okay, so for the messages, whenever we click on this, I want this notification count for the messages to go away as well. And then I want this message box, okay, this messages box to be highlighted. So I'm going to use a box shadow for that. Okay, so let me first get our variables. All right, I'm going to get this, okay, this menu item. We give it an ID of messages notification. So document dot query selector, an ID of messages notification. All right, so we have that. I want to get the messages box as well. Okay, so I'm going to call that messages, and I gave it a class of messages. Okay, I'm going to add an event listener, a click event. So whenever we click that, we want to highlight the messages box. So the messages box, I'm going to add some styles. So style dot box shadow, I'm going to set that to 001 rem for the spread or for the blur. And then variable, I'm going to use the primary color, okay, in the CSS file. That is what I'm going to use as the variable. So I actually gave it an ID of messages notifications, okay, and then let's run that again. All right, so when we click, we have this messages box highlighted, okay, but I want this to disappear after 2 seconds. Okay, so you set timeout, and that is going to be 2 seconds, which is 2000 milliseconds. Box shadow, I'm going to set that to none. Okay, so after 2 seconds, the box shadow is going to be set to none. Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to click it, and then after 2 seconds, this should disappear. The box shadow should disappear. Okay, but I want to hide this notifications. Okay, this messages count, I want to hide that as well. So right here, notification, okay, it's inside the messages notification, which is the messages menu item. Okay, it's inside that. So I'm going to do query selector and then get the notification count. Okay, this is going to be a class of notification count. I'm going to get that and then set the style display. Okay, I'm going to set the display to none. This should be display. Okay, display. All right, so let's try that. And now it's working perfectly. Okay, so we click, this count goes away, and then after 2 seconds the box shadow here also disappears. Okay, now for the search bar in the messages section, I want to filter my chart. Okay, so we want to have that search functionality in here. So for that, up at the top here, I'm going to get all the messages as well. So we have our notification, our messages, and then I'm going to get all the individual messages. Okay, so const message, let me show you that real quick. So we give every message a class of message. So that is what we are targeting. All right, next I want to get the search box. Okay, the messages search box. Okay, so message, we give that an ID of message search. Let me check real quick. Let me check that. Okay, it has an ID of message search. So here I want to add an event on the search, this search input. Okay, I'm going to have an event on that. So message search, I'm going to add an event listener, okay, and that is going to be a key app event. Going to do our function here. We are going to get the value being typed in, the message search dot value, and I'm going to make it lowercase, okay. I'm going to convert it to lowercase. For every message, I want to run a for each loop and use an arrow function here. So for every message, I'm going to grab the name of the user, okay. So chat, going to do query selector, and then they are all in h5, okay. They are all in h5. So I'm going to grab the text content and then change that to lowercase as well. Let me log the value, the val. Let me log that and see what we are doing. And everything I type in, any alphabet I type in, is going to be converted to lowercase, okay. It's going to be changed to lowercase. All right, so here I'm getting the names. So what I want to do is match the names that I'm getting to the names that are being typed in, okay. So if there is a match, then that means the index of these two values is not going to be -1, okay. That means what we are searching can be found in this name. So if there is a match, I want to display block, okay. For actually that is going to be displayed flex, okay, because that is the initial styling, that is the initial display we gave the messages, okay. The message, each message, let me see on the right side, each message. Okay, each message is displayed flex, okay. So that is the initial, that is why I'm doing it. I'm making it display flex. All right, so if there is a match, then display flex. We want to display the style, and then we want to display none. Let me remove this. Oh, I want to query selector all. I want to select all the name, and this should be to lowercase. I made a typo there. So let's try that out. I want to search Franca, okay. So what is wrong? Message. Oh, this should actually be message, okay. So we are grabbing the message. All right, so let's try that out. We search Franca and then we get that. Let's search anything with the name J, okay. Anything that contains J, anything that contains D, anything that has the name EL. Okay, so our search is working perfectly. All right, so now that we are done with our sidebar functionalities and our messages search, let's move on to our theme customization. Okay, so theme. For our theme customization, I'm going to put an event listener on this menu item. Okay, so let me go up top. Let me leave a comment here, say theme. So I'm going to call this theme, okay, and I'm going to grab that document dot query selector. Let me give it an ID of theme, okay. That is what I'm grabbing onto in the JavaScript. So an ID of theme, And next I'm going to get the modal, okay, the theme modal itself. So that is I'm going to call that theme modal, and we give that a class of customized theme. First, we want to be able to open and close the modal, okay? So I'm going to add an event listener on the theme handle, this menu item. So I'm going to add an event listener onto that, and that is going to be a click event. So I'm going to call this open theme modal. All right, and that is going to be a function, open theme modal. I'm going to use an arrow function here. Okay, so all I want to do here is set the display for the theme modal. Okay, I'm going to change the display from none to grid. Okay, that is the initial display we gave it. Let me show you real quick. We give it an initial display of grid, okay, before we set it to none. All right, so we are going to give it a grid again. Okay, so whenever we click this, we want the display for the theme modal. We want to set the style display, we want to set that to grid. So let's try that. We click it and then our modal shows. Okay, but now this is looking weird. Okay, this is not very responsive, so I'm going to go back to my CSS and then quickly make this responsive. So I want to get my card from customize theme, and I'm going to set the weight to, let's say, 96 viewport weight, and that is looking good now. All right, that is looking pretty good. Let me change it to 92. Okay, 92 is good. That is not looking bad. All right, so it should be responsive now. Actually, you know what, I'm going to change this to 80 on laptops and big tablets, and then I'm going to make it so we can now open our modal. Okay, but we want to close it whenever we click outside the card. Okay, actually, you know what, let me give the card a border or a shadow. Okay, a box shadow. It's kind of blending with the background. So customize theme card, I want to give it a box shadow. So box shadow 002 rem. Actually, let me make this one rem. And then I'm going to use the primary color. Okay, so color primary for the, yeah, so that is looking pretty good. So whenever we click outside the card, I want the modal to close. Okay, I want the modal to close whenever we click outside the card. So I'm going to put an event listener on the, let me leave a comment here, opens modal. So for closing the modal, I'm going to put an event listener on the modal class, okay, on the modal itself. So whenever we click outside the card, okay, we are going to click the modal, and that has a class of customized modal. So we are going to use that to close the modal. So theme modal dot add event listener, and there is going to be a click event. So when we click it, we want to call close theme modal, which is going to be a function. Set it to an arrow function, and then this is actually going to take in an event, okay, because we are going to use the target to actually close this. So if the target, okay, if the target class list contains a class called customize theme. Then I want to close the modal. Okay, I'm going to set the theme modal display to none. All right, so it's as simple as that. So let's try that. We can open our modal, and whenever we click outside the card, okay, we can close the modal. All right, so we have our opening and closing modal functionality. Now let's move on to our fonts. Okay, we want to be able to change our font. Okay, whenever we click on any of these spans, okay, these are actually spans. Okay, but we are going to add event listeners to them. Okay, a click event to them. All right, so these are what we are going to be grabbing. Okay, using query selector all. So I'm going to call this font sizes. Okay, query selector all, and then they are inside this. So choose size, and that is a class, and then span. So down here for the font sizes, I want to loop through them using a for each loop. So for each, let me say span, or for each size, I want to run this function. We are going to switch through to change this value. Okay, so what we are going to do is, if we select this first one, okay, if we select this first one, then we want to have a certain, we want to give it a certain size. Okay, we want to give the font a certain size. If we select this, then we want to give the font a certain size as well. So that is why we give them these classes. So we are going to say, if what we've selected contains this class, then we want to give our HTML elements a certain font size. Okay, if the size that we've selected, okay, the span we've selected, the class list of that contains font size 1, we are going to say the font size, which is this variable, should be equal to 10 pixels. All right, and that is our first if statement. Else if, I'm going to copy this, else if it is the second span we selected, then I want to change this as well. The font size is going to be 13 pixels. If it is the fifth one, then this is going to be 22 pixels. All right, so that is all. And then after we've selected this, what I'm going to do is actually change the HTML font size. Okay, the main HTML elements, I'm going to change the font size. Okay, so document dot query selector, and then I'm going to grab the HTML elements and change the font size to our size. Okay, our font size here, I'm going to change that to this. So what we are going to do is, whenever we change these values, okay, whenever we click to change a font size, we want to set a different top for our sticky positions. Okay, for our left and right sticky positions. So here in the CSS, you see we set variables for the top of our sticky position. So the left side, we set the top to 5.4 rem, and then the right side, we set the top sticky position to -18 rem. Okay, so what we are going to do is change this value whenever we select a different font size. So let me show you the sticky position we used. So for the right, the position was sticky, and then the top was this variable. Okay, so we are going to be changing this whenever we select a different font size. first let me get the root element, okay, which we are going to use to change variables. Okay, we use the root element. We are going to grab this to be able to change the different variables in here. Okay, so let me grab that. I'm just going to use var, and that is going to be root. So whenever we change the font size to 10 pixels, I want to change the root. I want to change the root style and then set the property. Set property. The property is this. Okay, and I'm going to set that to 5.4 rem. Okay, so for 10 pixels, this is actually not going to change. I'm going to duplicate that for the right as well. Okay, so sticky top right, I think that is what we named it. And this is actually going to be 5.4 rem as well. Okay, and then I'm going to grab all these. So for 13 pixels, I'm going to change this to -7. I want this to be clicked, okay, before the if statements run. Okay, so whenever we click any of these, okay, before the if statements actually run. Okay, so okay, and I'm going to run those if statements. All right, this should actually come in here. Okay, all right, so now we can actually change our font size. All right, perfect. But the problem is whenever we change the font size, we don't have that active class. Okay, on the span we are changing it on. Okay, so whenever I click this, I want that active class. Okay, I want this background on this. Um so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a toggle. Okay, so now everything is working perfectly. Let's move on to change our primary colors. Okay, so for that, let me show you in the HTML, and that is going to be this. So in the JavaScript, I'm just gonna call this color palette, and I'm going to grab all these spans. Okay, all these spans in there, and I'm going to loop through them. Okay, using for each. Okay, so color palette, I'm going to use for each color. I'm going to run a function. Okay, so for each color, I'm going to add an event listener, and that is also going to be a click event. I'm going to run a beautiful function here. So these are the colors. Okay, these are the spans we are grabbing. So for each of these colors, we are adding an event listener. Okay, and we are going to run a function here. So what I'm going to do here is, if the color class list, okay, contains, just like we did in the font sizes, okay, if the color class list contains color 1, which is our first span, then I want to set the primary hue. Okay, we are using HSL, okay, which is hue saturation lightness. Okay, so here we are going to change the hues. Okay, so if we select this first span, then I want the hue to be 252, okay, which is the default hue. All right, else if, and I'm going to grab this. So if we select the second one, then the primary hue is going to be, there's going to be 52. And I'm going to continue for the other spans. And now what I'm going to do at the bottom here is grab the root and then set the, I'm going to set the property, which is going to be the hue. Okay, and I'm going to do something real quick in the CSS. I'm going to change the hue of the primary color. Okay, I'm going to make that a variable. So I'm going to call that primary color hue. So here in the JavaScript, you are going to only change this value. Okay, and that is going to affect all the hue colors for the primary color variable. All right, so let me grab that and then put it in here. Okay, and we are going to change that value to the value we are clicking on. Okay, so we are going to change that to this. All right, and that is all for the, so let's try that. Okay, so now we can change the primary colors. All right, and this is very beautiful. Perfect. And now what I want to do is add the active class. Okay, for any of these clicked, I want to add the active class to the span. All right, so I want to do that down here. Okay, so now we have the active class, but I want to remove it whenever another item is clicked. Okay, whenever another color is selected. Okay, I want to remove that, so I'm going to write a different function. And I'm going to call this in here whenever we click on a different item. All right, so let's try that again. We click and now this has the active class. Okay, we click another one and now the new one has the active class. Okay, with the border, the white border. All right, so this is working perfectly. Beautiful. I think, let me reload and see. Okay, so by default I want the first one. Okay, the first one to have the primary active class. Okay, so by default I want the first one, which is this to have the active class. Okay, so now let's move on to changing the backgrounds. Okay, changing the backgrounds, let's move on to that. So for the backgrounds, for changing the backgrounds, what we are going to do is just change the lightness, okay, of our values. All right. So for instance, our main background color, okay, which is this light gray, is actually this color light. We could just change the lightness. So as you know, we are using HSL, okay, which is hue saturation lightness. Okay, so we could change the lightness of the color. We could make that 35, and then our color has changed. Okay, the background color has changed. So what we are going to do is actually make this a variable, okay, so that we can change that using JavaScript. We are going to make the light color lightness a variable, and then the white as well, and then the dark color, which is going to be the fonts. Okay, so if this is dark, then we are going to make the fonts light. All right. I'm going to set this to the new variable, which is going to be the dark color lightness, and then this is going to be the variable light color lightness. All right. And then the last one, which is this, the white color lightness, I'm going to cut that, set that to the variable, and then put the variable in here, white color lightness. Perfect. And everything should work exactly the same. Okay, so now we are going to use JavaScript to change these values. All right, so these are backgrounds. Okay, so we have our first background, which is the white one, this one, our second background, which is this, and then our third background. And notice they all have different classes. Okay, so we have bg3, bg2, bg1. All right, so here in the JavaScript, I'm getting the first color, the first background, the second one, and then the third one. Okay, so we have bg1, bg2, bg3. So the background starts from here. Okay, so I'm putting the light color lightness, okay, which is this, the light color lightness, that is going to be in a variable. So I'm initiating these variables for me to be able to change them whenever we click on any of these. Okay, so whenever we click on this, I want the dark color lightness, okay, to be 95. I want the white color lightness to be 22%, and I want the light color lightness to be 15%. Okay, so that is what I'm doing here, and I'm going to add the active class to it. Okay, so that I have this. Notice the first one has this active class. Okay, that is why we have this purple border. Okay, so here I'm adding that class, and then I'm removing it from the other two classes. Okay, so that is what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to call a function change bg. Okay, so this is the change bg function. Okay, so here I'm setting these variables to the root. Okay, so I'm setting these variables in the CSS. Okay, I'm setting these variables. All right, so that is all I'm doing here. Okay, so that is for the bg2. Okay, that is for this, for clicking this. You could actually use an if statement for all these, okay, to actually do this, but I just wanted to use a different approach. So for the bg3, it's going to be a similar situation. Okay, I'm just going to change the light color lightness to 0. Okay, the main background, I'm going to change that to 0, and then the white color lightness, I'm going to make that 10%, and then this is going to be 95% as well. Okay, and it's going to have the active class. Okay, and I'm going to call the change bg function again on this. So whenever we click this happens. All right, that is the bg3. And then for the first one, which is this, I'm going to add the active class and then remove the active classes from the other two. And then I'm just going to reload the page because all the css values are the default values for this. Okay, so to keep this, I'll just reload the page. Okay, so that is all for changing the backgrounds. Okay, so let's try that. So we can change the background, and you can see our background is changed. And I think I have some bugs. I have a bug in the css, so let's check that. That is a gray. Okay, why is this 000? Let me make this actually the primary color hue. Okay, and I'm going to make this 15%. The saturation is going to be 15%, and the lightness is going to be 65%. All right, perfect. And now everything is working beautifully. All right, so let's change this, and we have a different background. Beautiful. We can change our font size. So we have everything done, guys. We can search the name. Okay, and all that. Okay, we have our notification. We can click our messages and this will be highlighted, and we have everything done. All right, that is all for this project. You may want to check out my channel for more tutorials just like this one. Please share this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.